Right over there it says, "We will tow your car if you park here." There's all of these cars parked on the side of the road, and this one's mine. Oh, leg rehab is coming along pretty well, guys. I did a lot of body work exercises, nothing heavy, so it's kind of frustrating to be, honestly, I don't remember a time where body weight squats would fatigue me after just a few sets of 8 reps. But that's where you've got to start again when you've got surgery. 10 reps and your leg just feels devastated. I guess as an athlete, it just feels so foreign to feel so weak and vulnerable. And hopefully none of you guys ever have knee injuries. It's awful. I don't recommend it. But should it happen, or should you be curious about what it's like, I'll talk a little bit about my knee. I severed my ACL, so I'll talk a little bit about my ACL rehabilitation. And I'm at the 2-month mark right now. The hardest part with all this, though, is definitely right after I got injured, because I've never really spent like a prolonged period of time where I wasn't able to do jiu-jitsu. And maybe that's something I should be thankful for. I definitely am thankful for my good health all of these past years. I've always been able to train. The longest I've ever taken off from jiu-jitsu was probably something like 3 weeks. When I fractured my rib is the longest time I've ever taken a break. And even then, I should probably have waited 5 weeks, but I was on the mats drilling and nursing my rib as best I could. Oh man, the rib was awful. Like, I could turn left in my car and I'd be fine. But for some reason, whenever I had to take a right in my car, like it was a baby rib. I fractured my floating rib. So my baby rib, I think it was on the right side. And whenever I would take a right in my car, I was just like, excruciating pain in my baby rib. It got to a point where and in America, you drive around everywhere, so I was driving on a daily basis. And it got to a point where I'd like roll up to a stoplight and I would notice that I have to take a right. And my hands and my arms would start sweating because my body would anticipate the pain that was going to happen when I take a right. Nothing fun like that about having a knee injury. You got to limp around for about a month, and the size difference, wow. I mean, I was probably laying down for about 9 days and not really actively using my legs for something like 8 or 9 days since it was casted up, right? Like they put you in a cast. At least here in Korea, they're very conservative about the treatment. Like I was in a hospital for 6 days and I got out early. They wanted me to stay there for 10 full days. And the hospital's awful for a number of reasons. Number one, you can't shower at all. No, they don't let you shower while you're here. I have a bunch of stitches on my knee. Number two, you're just laying in a bed. There's no reason to get out because it's just so awful in the hospital. And just being so sedentary, I think, is just terrible for your leg. I'm sure it's good for people who might have such weak legs that you'd have instability walking. I can see how it might be better for them to be in a bed. But honestly, when you're just laying in a bed and you're not allowed to really do anything, not only do your muscles waste much faster, but it's hard to get motivated, and you kind of go into a dark place when you're just laying there. It's awful. I don't want to do it again. Worse than the surgery was probably having to be in the hospital. If I could at least just go to my house and just lay in bed at the house, it would just be so much better. And don't discount what a wonderful thing it is to be able to take a shower. I mean, just being able to take a shower makes a big difference too. But yeah, the hardest part about leg surgery was definitely after I got injured. There was like a 3-day period where I was kind of digesting how long I'm going to have to actually be in a recovery state. Like I blew a muscle in my knee once called the popliteus, and I had to take about a month off for that. It wasn't too bad because a month is, I mean, it sucked, but a month is just not that bad. But 8 months of this, and 8 months is being a little bit edgy, they say. If you want to be safe, they tell you not to really train hard in jiu-jitsu for 9 or 10 or even 11 months. Some people who have poor recovery even take a year off from sparring in jiu-jitsu at all. And that is just such a long time. Jesus. I mean, in jiu-jitsu, some people get their blue belts in a year. And when you think of it like that, it's quite a long time to take off the mats. Actually, it's really ironic because the week before I blew my ACL to tournament, but the week before when I was training, and usually I started resting around like Wednesday. So I'll take like 3 days off and then I'll go and compete. That's my usual schedule. But I was teaching a class on Wednesday and I was telling my students, man, like, business is kind of tough, like at the gym, at the bar that we're running, the time restrictions, and plus all this other shit that was going on in my personal life was like life just felt really tough, and I told my students that I was very thankful that I have them around, that I have them to rely on, that I can come and train with them. And I was telling them, to me, this is one of the best forms of therapy, to be able to train with you guys when I'm having a tough time. And just 3 days later, I blow my ACL out, and I'm in a place where I can't train for 9 months. And I was telling them, man, how ironic is it that just 1 week ago I was telling you guys how thankful it is, and now I'm back here 1 week later after my injury, just 3 days after my injury, and I'm at a point where I won't be able to train with you guys for 9 months. And it was really emotional for me. I really had talking to my students then, I really had a hard time, like, not losing my shit. Like, I was very emotional for some reason. And it's kind of weird because with the injury, when I was talking to my wife, or when I'm with my wife, she happens to cheer me up. She puts me in a better mood. She makes me feel better when I'm around her. But for a couple days, especially that first week when I would go to the gym, I had a hard time watching everyone train because it was just reminding me of, you know, the 8 months that I have ahead. I just got done with the rehab today, and today is the last day of my 7th week, so tomorrow I start my 8th week. I haven't actually gone a whole 2 months from surgery, but for the most part, my leg, for the day-to-day life, my leg is pretty good. You know, I can pick up some bags of grains and stuff and move it around, and I feel pretty strong. Well, I mean, my leg doesn't feel strong, but I feel pretty normal unless I try to actually put some weight onto my knee. Yeah, like most of the exercises that we do are just really basic body work exercises. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like the most intensive workout that I do with my knees are probably squats, lunges. They tell you not to use the extension machine, but I've been doing leg extensions and leg curls. My trainer who I've been working with has told me it's okay so long as I don't overdo it or use any kind of burst exercises. And the crazy thing is that my quad has just completely disappeared. And to try to build it back is a lengthy process. And for me, I get most of my leg pain when I'm working out is coming from my quad. So I think it's important to try to build it up. But when I do leg extensions, it feels like my quad is going to explode. It's really easy to tell if you're overdoing something because your knee either just really hurts or it just feels like your knee is, when your knee feels like you're going to explode, you know to taper off a little bit on the exercises. And my knee is so weak right now, we're not really doing any weighted exercises. I go to the trainer once a week and I come back and just do workouts. I've been working out my upper body a lot. Like 4 or 5 times a week I've been going to the gym and working out my upper body. And my legs have been shrinking, so it looks like I have chicken legs, which is pretty cool. I work out my left leg on its own, but it's not quite the same as being able to do squats with 2 legs. So my left leg is much bigger than my right leg, especially at first. Like, look at this photo. Look at the size difference between my right leg and my left leg. Like, this is maybe 3 or 4 weeks after I got out of the hospital. So yeah, my right leg had shrunk so much during that time, and now I'm just focusing on building it back as quickly as I can. And they say you can only do bodywork exercises, but you can do a lot of reps, and you can get your leg pretty tired by doing that. Of course, if you overdo it, your leg starts to hurt the next day, and if you overdo it too much, you can't work out the next day. And that's kind of like the fine balance, you know, is to try to find that middle happy point that your knee can handle, where you can do a lot of exercises on your knee and be able to do the same thing the next day. It's I guess difficult to find the balance. But now that I'm at the 2-month mark, I found like a good happy point where I can kind of coast along and just have progress every single day. But yeah, actually I wanted to say thanks to a couple of people on Reddit. I got a PM from a lot of people. I actually made a post on Reddit BJJ about trying to just figure out what kind of surgery I should get, what kind of rehab program I should be looking for. And for the most part, people just leave like really simple comments or words of encouragement, but a handful of people actually have gone through the same thing that I'm going through and have actually made full recoveries, and they would send me a really lengthy private message. And there's one guy in particular I really want to say thanks. His name escapes me right now, but he sent me this long article of a pretty like descriptive ACL reconstruction program workout, and it's really helped me because it's so descriptive week by week what your goals should be in terms of flexibility and strength, and what workouts you should be doing and what workouts you shouldn't be doing. And this is like a 0 to 9 month program, and by the time I'm done with the 9 months, I should be able to do jiu-jitsu. So this program has just been, holy shit. So this program has just been super helpful for me, and I'm really thankful that he sent that through. What I've discovered here in Korea is the surgeons they're completely useless when it comes to rehabilitation. They would rather you not rehabilitate. They would rather you never do sports again because it's bad for your knees. And I kind of see where they're coming from, but I mean, hey, if I blow my knee out again, I'd probably go back for surgery, so I'm kind of giving him more business, right? Oh no, I'm just kidding. I hope I never blow my knee out again. It's awful. And the trainer that I'm working with is awesome. He's wonderful. I wish I could go 2 or 3 times a week, but you know, there's the thing, like the cost is kind of expensive, but more than just the cost is this drive that I have to make, right? Like it's a solid 30-minute drive for me to get there, and on the way back, because there's so much traffic, it takes like maybe 40 minutes to get back, plus the time to park and walk there. So it's driving there takes longer than me actually working out there, and I work out for an hour. When I'm working out with him, I'm spending an hour doing the rehabilitation exercises with him. So it's not a small time commitment for me to go out here to do these leg rehab workouts. And since I'm just about to start our first brew and still in the process of really getting this brewery up and running, it's not quite feasible for me to be going there all the time at this time. Free up some time and I can get really serious about my leg exercise. Hey, I'm pretty serious about the leg exercises as it is, but having his guidance is pretty helpful because he makes me do some pretty interesting workouts. Ooh, man, I went to a dark pit. I went to a dark pit of self-pity for about a week or two. Really tough time, like, grasping this whole stupid adventure. I don't know if I would call this ACL rehab an adventure, but it kind of feels like a quest, you know. I have like a problem. There's like somewhere I need to go. I have a strong goal. There are hardships that I have to go through to get to that finish line, right? To getting back to where I was. Rather than dwelling on all the things that you can't do or all the things that you don't have, I think it's better to kind of dwell on the things that you can do. And if you think of it on the bright side, an ACL rehabilitation sucks because it takes so long to get back to normal, but one of the best things to think about is the fact that you can make a full recovery. And in injuries especially, there are some injuries where you can't make a full recovery. For example, like neck injuries, spine injuries, lower back injuries, like spinal injuries. Like some of those injuries you get, you're never going to really be the same. ACL rehabilitation can kind of be like that. If you don't do a good job rehabilitating your ACL, it can become one of those injuries where you'll never feel the same, but you have a fighting chance, right? You have that opportunity after surgery to rehabilitate like a madman. And if you do, you can come back almost to 100%. I think they say something like 90% is totally feasible. That's a reason to stay optimistic. Try to keep your mind on the things that you can do, the tasks on hand that you have to really focus on to get to where you want to be, and really be thankful that it could honestly be so much worse than it is. And when it's happening to you at first, it feels like it's the worst thing in the world, and it feels like, oh my God, when am I ever going to recover? But give it about a month, because after about a month, things won't seem as bad. And if they do, try to just always think about the tasks on hand, and eventually they will be better. But I still wake up sometimes and I'm like, man, this sucks. But you know, I don't want to be like, oh, you should always just be positive and happy. I mean, I know, I'm fully aware it doesn't work like that. If it is an ACL rehab that you're mentally trying to get over, just remember, anything that detracts from thinking about you being back to where you were, if not better, is just, they're just thoughts inside your head that's actually going to make your progress worse. The things that you think about can have a positive or negative impact on your recovery as well. So I choose getting back to normal as quickly as possible. As far as people who might be going through the same thing, like this program that this guy sent me, I would say definitely check this program out. It's excellent. I think it's probably good enough, you know, doing squats, extensions, curls, lunges. It's so good for your knee. I think you can probably make a recovery just doing these exercises. I do a lot of balancing exercises and posture exercises with my trainer, which helps. Especially if you don't really know the good form for squats and lunges, you definitely need someone to maybe show you the ropes before you try to do it on your own. But what I do is I go to the trainer once a week and he shows me all the new exercises, and usually, like, I have ropes, I have a gym that I can work out in, I have like a balancing foam pad that I can use for balancing workouts, and whatever he shows me that week, I'm just doing at the gym, especially during training. When my students are rolling, I can't roll with them, so I'm usually just doing leg rehab workouts. So that's another good 40 minutes a day, maybe 50 minutes to an hour a day that I can do rehabilitation exercises where I would normally just be sitting and watching my students. So I'm kind of sweating with my students and trying to get back to them as quickly as I can. In spirit, I'm there, right? Well, guys, it's been fun. I'm almost home. The worst thing about driving home from the rehab center is that it's 4:30, so the sun is kind of like starting to set a little bit, and I'm driving in the direction of the sun, and the sun is just blaring into my eyes the whole time. Very painful if you don't have sunglasses, so my sunglasses stay in the car now, and I pretty much only use them when I'm driving to rehab once a week.